Oh. breathing quiet, sentiment, benevolent. Dharma friends, sitting still in vital silence. Wanting nothing, we practice equal Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of non-violent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Amoga. Varochana Mahamudra. Mani Padme Jvala Pravartaya.
Good morning, everyone. So at all of our services, we take refuge in the three jewels of Buddhism, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And in keeping with our particular tradition, we'll first do that in Sino-Korean, and then a second time in English. So even if you're not sure of the words, just throw your voice in with the sound. And now in English, I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Buddha.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
And realize the great way.
And realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
And uncover oceans of wisdom.
And uncover oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many.
And transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
And transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
Please sit down again for another short period of meditation. Please join me in some simple stretches. So this morning, as we were finishing setting up the altar and all of the things that you see here in front of you, I was walking down the path over there and I noticed the chickens were all puffed up. So it must officially be fall because they were looking very fluffy this morning. It's that cusp of the season where it's the last of the tomatoes, the first of the squash. We have a cool breeze here this morning in Ann Arbor. And we have all of you. And because you are here, I am here. So thank you for turning up. I wanted to start with the land acknowledgement that I did last week and that Hajj Sunim wrote several weeks ago. just to give a little bit more context for where we are sitting here today. So in the spirit of healing, I acknowledge that our temple sits on the ancestral homelands of the people of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Ottawa, as well as the Anishinaabe, Menominee, Miami, and Ho-Chunk nations. More recently, our temple building, big yellow house that you see over there at 1214 Packard, and the original building that sat here at 951 Woodlawn until a couple of years ago when we built that new structure, as well as many other homes on Woodlawn were a vibrant Black community. And our original temple building was home to an African American doctor and also was a boarding house at one point. So just to give a little bit of our history. So was anyone here last week? A few folks, especially the people in the front row. So we've been doing a series of talks on a theme this particular season on the three jewels. And you'll notice at the beginning of our service, I said all of our services begin with taking refuge in the three jewels of Buddhism: Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So last week, I talked a little bit about the third of the three jewels, which is Sangha, and have a continuation of some of that topic today. So as you may remember, just a little bit of recap from what we talked about last week, especially if you weren't here. I gave a little bit of the story of the sort of original Buddhist Sangha. In other words, the community of practitioners who eventually would go on to become monks and nuns, who formed around this teacher who later became known as the Buddha, but at the time was an Indian man, North Indian man named Siddhartha Gautama. And he, is the sound okay, by the way? Can you hear okay? Okay, good. And one of the details that I had mentioned that I thought was particularly interesting was that original Buddhist Sangha was not organized around social caste. And if you're at all familiar with some of the social norms in India, the idea of social caste still continues to this day, and there was a version of it in place at that time. But it was sort of a radical act that this particular community of spiritual seekers was not organized that way. In fact, the Buddha sort of radically taught at that time that your birthright was really what you did through your actions, that you weren't a noble person just because of your birthright, but because of how you conducted yourself. And that was sort of one of his early core teachings. So because this community was sort of operating in this new context, they eventually came to a set of norms that would govern their actions as a spiritual community to maintain harmony. So this later became known as the Vinaya, a sort of code of conduct for monks and nuns. And that continues to this day in a monastic community. There's many hundreds of guidelines that a monastic person would follow. And then for our present day, we have a very simple sort of version of those guidelines for communal harmony. So I just wanted to revisit that because I'm going to talk a little bit more about sort of our modern context for today. Let's see if I can find the right page. Okay. So our particular Sangha, that includes Ann Arbor, as well as our sister temples in New York City, Mexico City, Toronto, and Chicago, is known as the Spring Wind Sangha. And so the simple 6 guidelines that we have are the 6-fold harmony for Spring Wind Sangha. So as you listen to these, just bring your hands palm to palm so that you can invite your body into the listening as well. 6-fold harmony for Spring Wind Sangha. 1. Harmonize with each other in conduct and actions. 2. Harmonize with each other in speech and talk. Three, harmonize with each other in intention and purpose. 4, seek peace and happiness through the cultivation of precepts. 5, seek peace and happiness through diversity of understanding. 6, seek peace and happiness through sharing spiritual and material benefits. 'So I wanted today to tell a couple of stories about my personal experience with the concept of Sangha, and then talk a little bit more about sort of how Sangha functions as part of our spiritual development. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to have our fall Youngmin Junction, which is our intensive meditation retreat. It's about 3 or 4 days. And I think the fall retreat has become my favorite because of that sort of change of the seasons. You can really feel the seasonal changes as we kind of sit through those few days. And as I was thinking about the impact of Sangha on my particular kind of trajectory here at the temple, I was thinking about my first Youngmin Junction, which I can't remember. I want to say it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago at this point, but I'm not for sure. I had done a couple of one-day meditation retreats, which are 9 to 5 on a Saturday. That was the most I had ever sat in meditation. And so I was really nervous about doing 3 full days. Our practice, in terms of the meditation practice on those days, is about 7 or 8 hours a day of meditation with lots of breaks and things like that. And I had told my teacher, Haju, that I was kind of nervous. And she said, well, don't worry about it. There's a nap period in the afternoons. It's like, oh, there's a nap period. Okay, I can do this. But it was pretty cold already that year. And I don't think at that point I had spent enough time in the temple to know how cold it was going to be inside the building as well. So I didn't bring enough warm clothes. We have old radiators and we're cost and eco-conscious, so we don't turn them up very high. And my memories of a lot of that retreat were getting into my sleeping bag and shivering for 15 minutes to warm up enough that I could fall asleep. And then a few minutes later, hearing the moke talk to wake us all up again to go and do the next thing that was on the schedule. So there are a couple naps during the day, which was nice. But by maybe the second day or so, I was assigned to go and kind of rake up leaves and fallen branches and things in the front yard under the curly willow tree out there. And there were still little sprouts under the leaf matter. And I had been so quiet and focused for a couple of days that like raking back the leaves and finding these fresh plants underneath the leaves was such a miraculous thing that happened that I just felt this like burst of joy, like, oh my gosh, these plants they're doing the retreat with me. I didn't even know they were here, and here we are together. So it kind of it gave me a sense that I wasn't in it alone in a way. And I think the only reason I was really able to complete that retreat, because it was challenging for me, was that I just did what everyone else was doing. We would do periods of walking meditation in between sitting, and all you have to do with walking meditation, even if you're tired and cold, is you just follow the person in front of you, and you try not to step on the back of their heels. And the same with sitting. We would sit until I think we end around 10 or so at night, and you could hear the crickets singing, with the candles lit on the altar, and you really just have to stay in the room with the other people. And so I think that was my first, maybe deeper experience of Sangha. And what's interesting about it is that we don't talk. So it wasn't that I somehow became friends with all of these people I was hanging out with for 3 days. I didn't even really know some of them, but the energy that we shared with each other really gives you a sense of another person, even without exchanging any words. So some of you who have done meditation retreats, I'm sure, have experienced that. So yeah, maybe that was my first taste of Sangha in a way that wasn't about really talking or having some kind of intellectual understanding of what it meant that we were really doing here together. We were just kind of doing it together without a lot of explanation. So that's the first story. And then much more recently, I was in Chicago this summer for the precept taking ceremony, which happens on an annual basis, and then for my ordination ceremony. I am the newest Dharma teacher here in Ann Arbor, and this is a ceremony to bestow the robe and take formal vows of becoming a teacher. And it was also the first time at that point in the pandemic that I had really been around other people, except through a screen, for about 18 months. So I was kind of nervous. And then there was this big ceremony, and my husband got up early in the morning to drive me to Chicago so that I could get there in time, and all of this. So I had arrived, and everyone was there. All of our teachers from other places and members of the community from Chicago. And Haju said, "Oh, well, you should go and check in with Doan Sunam. He is the Dharma master of our organization, sort of the spiritual director of our organization." And I had met him once before in person, a couple of years before. And so I went and found him and, said hello and greeted him. And then I left. And then I was running around trying to get ready for things. And Haju said, "Well, did you do a prostration when you went and met with Doan Sunam?" And I said, "No." "Well, it's customary when you greet the Dharma master for the first time, after a while, you do one prostration. Don't even say anything about it. You just drop to the floor and do a prostration. This is part of our tradition." I said, "Oh, I didn't know about this. I'm so sorry." "Well, you should go and do it now." So I sort of sheepishly went back up and knocked on his door again, and he came out, and without him saying anything, I just immediately did a prostration on the ground. And without a thought, he dropped to the floor and did a prostration with me. And I didn't say like, "Oh man, I'm really sorry, I didn't know about this," and yada yada. We just both did it. And it really was touching because that instant humility takes years to cultivate. And I think that really just struck me about him. And I think is an important value that the practice of Sangha teaches. So you may remember I shared a little detail from that monastic code last week about the Vinaya, right? And one of the early teachings was that the monks should not become too comfortable with material possessions. So even though they had some rich benefactors who might help support their community and would give them shelter during the rainy season and things like this, one of the rules was that the monks should not forsake their forest lodgings, living out in the forest as wanderers, essentially. And to this day, one of the guidelines for monastics is to not sleep on an elevated bed. So it's like a futon on the floor, things like this. And in that moment of Doan just dropping to the floor and doing a prostration with me, I saw that echo of never being too old or too accomplished to really demonstrate that vow of interconnection and humility. And it was really just a sweet moment. There's actually a story about one of the great disciples, Sariputra, who's sort of the right-hand man of the Buddha in the early days. And there's a little story about him where he's walking with a community of monks, including some very young monks, like children. And his robes are in disarray. And a 7-year-old novice kind of points out that, you need to fix that. And without saying anything, he immediately fixes his robes and makes a bow to the child and says, "Teacher, now it is correct." And so, again, we see that spirit of humility being what helps the connections of Sangha really flourish. All right. So those are my 2 stories. I wanted to talk a little bit about what is unique about seeing yourself as part of a spiritual community, or at least my take on that. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but this is what got me thinking about it. It's sort of like, well, what makes Sangha work? And you may have seen, it's quite popular to share this artifact from, I think, like the 1940s or 50s. Woody Guthrie, who was an American folk singer in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. He wrote, I think it was 1943, he wrote his New Year's resolutions. And they're really lovely. If you look them up online, you can find them. It's things like, remember to brush your teeth and call your parents, things like this. But one of them that always stuck with me is keep hoping machine running. And so I thought about it in the terms of Sangha, like, well, what keeps the Sangha machine running? Like, we've been through a lot of challenges as a society over the last 18 months. What is keeping this whole thing, going? And of course, here at the temple, we've had to find really creative ways to try to still keep in touch with people. And I think there's a few things that I would say are what keep Sangha going and renew Sangha. One of them is ritual. In a sense, these services are a kind of community ritual. There's a reason why that we do things in a certain order, and there's certain components to it. It becomes something that is a container to really share this time and place together and kind of bring us physically and mentally together into one space as more of one being. There's a little poem, actually it's not little, it's quite long, that Haju will often read at Thanksgiving. And it's from a Native American tribe, and it's the Thanksgiving prayer. And it's this beautiful, long kind of prayer giving thanks to all the elements of the earth and the animals and the seasons and things like this. And at the end of each stanza, we repeat, "Now our minds are one." And I think the purpose of ritual, in a sense, is to create that feeling of connection and oneness through the sharing of chanting, through the sharing of prostrations, meditation, just hearing the wind chimes and the breeze while we're sitting here under the tent. So ritual, I would say, is one. Just showing up and then doing it again, and then doing it again, and then doing it again. Even maybe you're not sure. Like when I signed up for that meditation retreat, why am I doing this? But I felt a pull And so I just showed up. And I think maybe the most important one, or at least the one I want to focus on, is Sangha allows us to practice a different kind of interpersonal relationship. At least in most of the rest of my life, the models that I have for relationship are very specific, and they don't really apply here as much. So I'm familiar with things like an employee-boss relationship, right? There's a particular role that I'm playing as an employee, or if I'm a boss of someone, and that's a very specific kind of relationship with very specific rules about power and how you conduct yourself, how you save face, maybe. We have family relationships where we might be a parent, a child. Sometimes those roles get reversed with both positive and negative outcomes. But at the temple, we practice what we call spiritual friendship. Not just knowing a person, kind of liking them or clicking with them because we like their personality or something like that. But spiritual friendship, I think, is more about expanding our notion of what a relationship is about. And it's a lot more complex than just the friendship based on kind of mutual like and understanding. We might be spiritual friends with someone who kind of really annoys us. But the container of that friendship is big enough that we're looking at it from the perspective of Dharma, like we're supporting each other in this spiritual path. And we're going to take, sort of the agreement that any annoyance that we're causing each other, we're really taking that in as like food for the Dharmic path, not as another piece of evidence that I'm going to organize my life around only the things I like or only the things that I dislike. Well, I guess you wouldn't organize your life around things you dislike, would you? So I think maybe there's sort of a wider array of expressions of spiritual friendship. I kind of liken it to, you have this beautiful mirror and you hope that you're carrying that around and you're inviting people to kind of see what you're seeing in the most like beautiful way, but then also like they've got the same mirror too, right? Sometimes you don't really like what you see. But if you're holding the mirror in a loving way, then it allows that that view to become more clear for you, if that makes sense. And then the other little detail about Sangha in our particular tradition that I find really kind of fascinating, and you may have picked up on this a few weeks ago when we had some folks who were taking precepts, sort of formally committing to becoming Buddhist, and they each gave a story about their experience, right? And what was interesting is many of them said, well, when you take precepts, you get a new name. And each of them said this, and then I thought it was really funny because Haji pointed out, well, the purpose of taking precepts isn't to get a new name, it's to formally become Buddhist and sort of commit yourself to this path. But what was interesting to me is that they each kind of really seized on that as an important aspect of that transition. And of course, in many religious traditions, there would be a ceremony when you take on a new name. And I know in Catholicism, which is what I was raised in your confirmation ceremony, you choose a name of a saint. And of course, at bar mitzvah, husband's tradition, you would get a new name then too. So it's not unusual, but it seems to be something people really kind of like as part of our particular expression of precept taking. And so I was reflecting on why that might be. And I know for myself, one of the things that was the most magical to me about becoming involved in the Sangha here is I really only knew people's Buddhist names. I had no way in my mind of putting them into a category like I might do in my social life. Oh, that's so and they work here and they live in Ann Arbor and they do this. And I, mentally kind of cataloging people according to whatever unexamined way I had been taught, right? I had no idea who these people were, but I got to learn who they were just by spending time with them, doing work, doing meditation practice, doing the retreats. And then sometimes years later, I'd find out some interesting detail about folks, and I'm like, oh, wow, I had no idea. We've never talked about it. So I think in a way, the Buddhist name is really freeing because it recontextualizes you into like this new kind of community where who you were in the past or what you do when you're not here is much less important. And then the simple things of just how you're able to be helpful and relate to people in this community also, I think, can be really an opportunity to discover who you are as this Dharma person. Maybe you haven't had the opportunity to see yourself as a Dharma person in other contexts when you are the employee or you are the parent or the child. But here, that is much more available. And maybe you can discover, wow, I'm kind of capable of a lot more things than I thought. A little bit more patience, a little less judgment. And then just to kind of close out that part around precepts. It's really easy to see the precepts as a set of rules. We heard them recited last week when a couple more folks were formally taking their precepts. And our Dharma teacher, Kusa, at a meeting this weekend was talking about, he really invites us to see precepts as another training vehicle, just like our meditation practice and our chanting and our prostrations as a training vehicle. So not a thing that you can do 100% perfectly, but always a thing that you're just discovering new layers of. And I think, at least for me personally, what opens up my understanding of the precepts is not to think about them as rules that I'm putting on myself, but rather to think about them as commitments that I'm keeping on behalf of a community. Because for me, it's a lot easier to give up on myself and say, oh, I don't really need to do that today. I'm kind of tired, this and that. But if it's on behalf of a community, it's a lot easier to be inspired and to act out of love for that community and to see it as more of an action that we're taking together. So we just have a couple of minutes left. I just wanted to reinforce the idea that Sangha is about this interrelationship, and an interrelationship out of belief that we've all got potential. We've all got Buddha nature, right? So that, in a sense, is love, a form of love for each other and for each other's kind of essence. And so I just wanted to kind of invite you into a reflection for your coming week. I think I'd like to start just with a little bit of loving kindness meditation. And then we're going to think about who in our lives or what circumstance maybe in our lives might be in need of a little bit of our spiritual friendship this coming week. So metta means loving kindness. So I'll guide you if you would like to take a comfortable meditation posture. Just checking in with your seat bones, your spine. seeing how your breath is flowing, feeling the breeze. And then just bringing your awareness with the gentleness of a warm hand to your chest, where your heart is located. We're going to generate a little bit of metta energy by thinking about a person or a being that we have just really uncomplicated and loving feelings for. Maybe even a pet, a child, a loved one. Doesn't matter if you haven't seen or talked to them in a long time. Call their face to mind. And with the warmth of your attention directed at them, we think, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be free from suffering in body and mind. Maybe you can see a little smile on their lips. Allow their face to fade away. And then just bring up a neutral person. Maybe someone that you sat next to on the bus. Maybe the person sitting next to you right now. Offering them the same loving kindness. Breathing through the heart, we say, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be free from suffering in body and mind. Now we will turn that beam of loving kindness on ourselves. Maybe this one is the more challenging one, to offer self-compassion. Perhaps we wish to call to mind what our face looks like through the eyes of those who love us. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be free from suffering in body and mind. Noticing any warmth that we have generated through our loving kindness attention. little bit of light outside. And then we're going to expand our point of view, thinking about people we may encounter this week, those we know, perhaps strangers, perhaps people that we have difficulty with in our relationships, perhaps friends who we love dearly. Just thinking through what you might be encountering this coming week, conversation that you need to have, conversation that you are avoiding. Is there any opportunity to think of that as a place to practice spiritual friendship? Just to bring a little bit more love, a little bit more clarity to that encounter. Once you know what it is, just returning to your breath. Recentering. And making a vow. Thank you all for being here. Any questions or comments? Or should we hear some announcements? Okay, announcements. Magamot, do you need the microphone?
Yeah, I think I'll come up and use the
Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning,
Good
Magamot.
morning, Magamot.
I'd like to welcome everyone here today. It's good to practice and be outdoors and share each other's company in the sunshine. And we have a lot of new people here today. So if you have any questions, you can ask any of us wearing the gray pajamas, and we will try to answer your questions. And I also want to encourage you to sign up to be on our mailing list. We send out a weekly email bulletin that tells you about the events that we have coming up at the temple. And so there's a sign-up sheet on the table in the back if you'd like to be on our mailing list, and we do not share your name with anyone else. And I want to point out a few things coming up on our calendar. The first one is we're going to have a picnic in Burns Park. This is a chance for us to get together and talk informally and meet each other and cultivate some of that spiritual friendship that Jagwa was talking about. And for this picnic, we ask you to bring food and drink for yourself. Someday the pandemic will be over and we can share food again, but at least we can share each other's company, and we'll have some special entertainment, and everyone is welcome, and that is free. And that's going to be on this coming Saturday at 5 p.m., and we're going to do it in Burns Park, right up here.
In the Great Lawn
Oh yeah, it's in the Great Lawn of Burns Park, which is near the restrooms there. Okay. Um, and the 2021 Buddhist Hunger Walk is coming up. So the Hunger Walk is a benefit for Buddhist Global Relief. And that's an organization that was founded by Bhikkhu Bodhi. And it provides programs for food assistance, education, women's empowerment, and sustainable agriculture. And it benefits people around the world and also in our local communities. And so it's a really great organization. We are going to have a short walk in the neighborhood next Sunday at the morning service. So we'll start with no?
The 10th.
The 10th. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It's going to be on the 10th. And so you can make a contribution either at the service and we'll forward it to Buddhist Global Relief, or you can go online to buddhistglobalrelief.org and make a contribution there and learn some more about the organization. The fall practice period is coming up. And in the fall practice period, I'm very excited about this because we're going to study the Sin Sin Ming. The Sin Sin Ming is a poem that was written by the third Zen patriarch several centuries ago. And if you've heard the phrase, the great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose, that is the opening lines of the Sin Sin Ming. And so we're going to be studying that poem on 8 Sundays from noon to 1 p.m. There's a sign-up sheet in the back. And the study and discussion is going to be led by Tongsan Catherine Brown and Gogsong Richard Harris. So that begins next Sunday. And so it's a very inspiring poem, and I encourage you guys to participate in that. For members, we have membership meetings coming up. One is today, and then we also have them October 10th and October 17th. So those are all Sundays. It's going to be at noon for 1 hour, and the title is 3 Jewels, 3 Great Learnings, and Pandemic Practice. You can either attend in person or online. Space is limited, so we ask you to sign up in advance for that. And then, as Jagwa mentioned, we have a 4-day retreat coming up. This is an intensive retreat called Youngman Junction. And it consists of sitting meditation, periods of walking meditation, work practice, vegetarian meals.
And a nap.
And the all-important nap period. Yes. And interviews with Haji Sunim and Dharma talks. It's going to be held both in person and online. And so you can ask us if you have questions about that. There's a sign-up sheet if you're interested in doing that. And here at the temple, we offer yoga courses. We offer introductory meditation courses from time to time. And so if you sign up for our weekly email bulletin, we let you know about when those things are coming up. Groups meeting today, Recovery Dharma, I believe this meeting. Where and when?
We're meeting at noon in the Dharma Hall.
Meeting at noon in the Dharma Hall. Any other groups that are meeting today? Okay. The temple is supported entirely by your kind's donations of time and money. There's a fishbowl on the table in the back for monetary donations. If you'd like to donate your time, talk to any of us wearing the gray about opportunities to volunteer. And we also have, I'll mention, opportunities to help in our garden every Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. To come and help with the garden. So I'll turn it back over to Jagwa to close out the service. Oh, need this back.
Yeah. So we'll end with the 4 great vows. So please repeat after me. All beings, one body.
All beings, one body.
I vow to liberate
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root.
Blind passions, one root.
I vow to terminate.
I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates, one mind.
Dharma gates, one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.
Then we'll just stand and do 3 vows.
So anybody who has time is invited to stay a few minutes and help Jagwa take things down from service.
Oh yes, I was forgetting about this. Yes, if you would like to help us put things away,